We are live. I'm going to just stick a bunch of stuff in the comments. Okay, it appears we're live on Facebook. Let me just close this. So I'd like to welcome you all today. Angelica, Brazil. How are things down in Brazil? Actually, now that we're on Facebook, I should go around and introduce everyone again. Karen, you're on my screen. You're up in the top right corner. I don't know what on other screens you are, but how are things in Mexico? How's the work going?
The work's going rather well, Alan. I feel like I've had a good week, worked a lot. I'm in a good place.
Okay. Well, what was the highlight of the working part of your week in terms of inner exercises?
I was at a meeting and we were talking about how nothing, Mr. Gurdjieff said nobody can do anything. You can't do anything. And we were talking about that. And I realized very strongly how when I was in Egypt, I got the understanding of the passive voice being the force behind everything, in terms of the netters are responsible for what happens, in terms of, for instance, I sunbathe, the sun bathes me. And the Egyptians had that concept for everything. And I think that's probably where Mr. Gurdjieff got that idea, that we can't do, we are done. So I've been thinking a lot about that. It was a very insightful meeting.
Okay. We can only not do as long as we're a machine. A machine is incapable of performing volitional, conscious, and intentional actions. So as long as we're in the machine itself, we can't do. But the minute we begin to step out of that, the possibility of doing becomes more and more real. And Mr. Gurdjieff also highlighted the importance of having an aim. He said, without an aim, we cannot do. If we set a goal and we achieve it, we can be said to have achieved our goal and fulfilled our aim. But if we're just haphazard in life, knocked this way and that way, if we're in the mechanical self, we can't do. So, but I think it's interesting what you said about the passive voice. For most people, most of the time, they just flow along with circumstances. And if they try to do, they fail, and then they give up and they allow things just to begin happening to them. Brian, how are things in Scottsdale, Arizona?
They're good. And, last meeting we talked about, eating and being more conscious while we're eating.
Mm-hmm.
And, Karen talked about deconstructing the meal and thinking about where everything kind of came from, and the sequence of events that had to take place to get to your plate. And I have lunch almost every day at Whole Foods, and now I've been leaving my phone in my car so I can concentrate more on the meal. And then it's kind of funny when you look at everybody else who is more concentrated on their phones than they are on the food, and it's like a completely another perspective on eating.
Are you taking it to the extent that Karen did, imagining the farmers of the field and the various people in the food processing places putting it together? And
yeah, I'm definitely doing that. And then by leaving the phone in the car is like my reminder that, that's what I'm there to do.
Okay, that's good. I like that adaptation. Leaving your phone, just really focusing on the food. Wonderful. Yeah. Angelica, how are things in Sao Paulo, Brazil? You're looking nice and sunny with a hat. Are you outside?
Yes, I am outside, and it's beautiful. Nice. Today we have 25 degrees of winter.
Yeah, just almost the middle of winter down there, and it's 25, and all the green plants in the background. And
yes, it's okay. And I'm outside. I like, and today I choose to sit here to be with you all.
I remember one of the first private messages you sent me was about a poisonous snake that got into your house.
Yes.
So you have all of those things in your garden potentially, and
Yes, sometimes, yes, and I told you that it's nice and not because I needed to kill one snake and to save my dog and myself, and I don't like that, but there was no way out, or I die and or is naked, and it's terrible. It's really terrible. This we must put ourselves first. And
well, I was reading a couple of weeks ago that 90,000 people a year die from snake bites. So that's a big problem. I was born in Africa. I moved to England when I was 2.5 and to Canada when I was 5. But I was taught, and I have this fear of snakes, but I was taught to fear snakes because in the tropical climates, they're poisonous. Fortunately, here in Canada, the winter, it gets so cold. Only a certain kind of rattlesnake that lives around the Great Lakes, right close to the Great Lakes, where it stays warm, can live. Otherwise, we have no poisonous snakes up here. The winters are just too frigid for them, and they don't survive. But walking in your house, having seen a snake, that would make you really mindful, really perceptive. And I guess even when you go out into the garden, you've got to be looking around a little bit more carefully, a little bit more mindfully, a little bit more personally conscious, just because of the potential dangers that could be lurking around. Yeah.
no, it was now in the meantime, after 25 years, I live here, and sometimes I feel that somewhere one snake is, and, and but that time, a short time ago, when killed the snake, I felt so bad.
Yeah. Well,
And
you're a vegan, so to actually kill an animal, but you have to put your own safety and the safety of your dog ahead. But make you really aware, at least for the next while, walking around your place, looking, really conscious, really mindful. And I believe this is one of the reasons why not just Mr. Gurdjieff, but he did say that the state of self-consciousness, personal awareness, to remember myself here in this environment is the natural state for a human being. So, and living closer to nature, you're more aware of that you have to walk around with a degree of mindful awareness, aware of your environment, just to keep safe. Here, in Toronto, people can put their headphones on and sunglasses and they walk down the street oblivious. They see a red light, they stop, they wait and they cross, and they're not really aware of their environment. They're not aware of their circumstances. But if there were poisonous snakes, if there were insects, various different things around, they may be a little more conscious. Ian, how's it going with you in Portland, Oregon?
Well, things are good. Warming up again. Sunny morning.
How is the Airbnb business?
Supposed to be better this time of year, but it's early on in the month. We'll see how it goes.
Okay. How's the inner work going?
I had a moment this week. I was in a not serious, but a little bit of a car accident a couple of weeks ago. And this guy was basically turned in front of me, scraped up my bumper, just maybe about that much of a scratch. The insurance was going to take care of it. Everything was fine. And then we got a call from them this week saying that he was claiming injuries and was seeking money from that. And I just got so angry because I know it's bullshit. I remember him getting out of the car. I know how bad of an accident it was, all that. So after that, I got really worked up, and I went outside to have a cigarette, and I had, it wasn't like it was Mr. Gurdjieff's voice, but I remembered reading him saying, you know, as long as people who make you angry, as long as you allow them to do that, they're in control of you, you know, or if it rains and that makes you angry, you know, that mechanical anger response. And how do I put it? I guess I went and I had the cigarette anyway, and I was feeling sort of remorse at myself, just at seeing how, you know, I knew that this was not the best action to take in response to the situation that was making me angry. And I had, you know, you talk about taking these photographs, these snapshots of ourselves in these states. I had a moment of seeing myself, seeing the weakness in myself in that moment. And there was a very strong, either energetic or emotional response that came up in response to that felt very important. You know, like it's like I don't normally, my normal image of myself is not that I'm going to let some asshole kind of derail my plans or my day, but I totally did. I did. And just saw myself mechanically going through the whole thing. So that was the highlight for me, being able to catch that moment and really see myself that way.
That's a priceless observation. It really is. The ability at that moment to catch yourself, even though the biochemicals are still flooding around your body and the adrenaline is pumping through your heart and all of that are making you feel that feeling, to catch yourself in the moment and not just fall down that hill. That's, you know, quite an achievement.
I think the best part of it for me, and I'm sorry to kind of interrupt you, but I just remember this part, was I noticed myself like making stories like, oh, I'm deciding to have this cigarette. I'm going to do this now and then I won't have them later. And there were all these layers, these like little layers I was putting over my action to try and justify it, or to try and maintain this story that I have that, no, I'm not letting this guy affect me. This is a choice I'm making. And I was able to stop those. Like I was able to hold those at bay and actually see what was happening. And that was what kind of clicked it for me as a special thing. Yeah.
That sounds really good. Those of you who are watching on Facebook or are watching on YouTube, this is important. If you can catch yourself in these kind of moments and observe yourself, the observations that you make will be priceless. Hisham, Morocco, you're in Marrakesh right now. You know, before we were on Facebook, I was kind of making a joke of the 60s song by Stephen Stills on Crosby, Stills, Nash, the Marrakesh Express. So those of us old enough, you know, we think of, you know, this really exciting place to be for all the hippies back in the 60s, but it's where your parents live, I guess. Your family is from Marrakesh?
Yes, I was born in Marrakesh, my parents also. So right now I'm in Marrakesh since 6 days, since last weekend. Before the first 4 days, it was pretty hot, 40 degrees sometimes.
Whoa.
Now it is fairly cool, 30 degrees, 32 degrees, so it is good comparatively.
Yeah. How do you find going back to your family? because you don't live with your family. And this is a
Yes.
really interesting place to observe ourselves, because we
Yes.
may have grown and changed, but they don't perceive that. And they treat us in the same old way as they've always done. And within ourselves, there's a battle to know I've changed, and there's a battle to conform. And it's a really interesting place to observe yourself going back after having been away from the family, to see how they have this mental box with you in it. And as soon as you walk in the door, you're back in that box, you know, mom, dad,
Yes.
brothers, sisters. It's just they don't really give you the opportunity to change at home. At least I found that with my family.
Yes, indeed, Alan. And that it was the main theme for my work, because it gives me a lot of observation about myself and about my parents also. That enables me to understand a lot of things about my background. The more I am in contact with my family, the more I know about myself. As you said, it is difficult because they have a fixed image about you, how you should behave. But that I worked for about that since years ago, and little by little, I think that now there is more understanding in the family as was before. But it is also interesting because I get to I always have some observations, emotional observations. I can understand some things about myself, why I behave in a way, and not in another way. And it is also a good inner exercise, because I try to not play the role that I always played in the family, to not react as I always have done. So for me, it is a good work.
I don't know if you read Mr. Gurdjieff's Paris wartime meetings, the transcripts of those meetings. These meetings took place during the Nazi occupation in Paris, and he advised his students to learn to play a role. So perhaps, you know, learning to break the pattern with your family is good. It might even be good to try to see if you could fit into the old role and play that role, but not be identified with the role. That was it. That was the consideration.
Yes.
You know, he said,
Yes.
go to work, you know, maybe one of your bosses is a Nazi or something or whatever. Go, when you're out in the world, play a role. You play the role of yourself as you were before, but you do it without the attachment and identification to that role, and to try and play that role as exquisitely and as you can, to the highest degree, so that no one is even aware that you are playing a role. And I suppose in a family, that would give you the opportunity to do that, because they expect you to conform to a certain role. They expect you to be a certain way. And so if you can be that way, but be completely non-attached. I mean, the two things, one is to be different and try to get them to engage in the difference. And the other would be to play the role, you know, with sublime artistry, really become the actor, playing yourself in that role. That was something he emphasized over and over and over and over again in those wartime meetings, is learning how to play a role, and to play the role with consummate artistry, but not be identified with that role. At any rate, I'm going to pull up the quote that I like to, if I can find it. No, I'm not. Let me just see if I pull this up, if I can pull this up onto the screen. Just a second. I'm not sure why it's not showing me this. I tried to set this all up ahead of time. Here it is. Finally, okay. I wish to be. And those of you on Facebook, those of you watching on YouTube, those of you here live on the group, you know, repeat these words in your mind to yourself as a vow. The more we say things, as a hypnotherapist, there's something that we call the law of compounding. In other words, the more we repeat things, the more powerful and resonant the effect is. So just follow along. I wish to be. I can be. I have the right to be. I have the ability to be. I swear to myself that this will never be for my personal profit, but to help others. I wish to be to help others. This is to be understood as a vow. So we're not doing this work for ourselves. We are doing this work. Well, we're not just doing this work for ourselves. We're doing this work for ourselves. We're doing this work for humanity. And we are doing this work for the earth herself. There are the three lines of work, not the three lines of work, the three octaves of food, the three types of food. The food that we eat is part of great nature. It's part of the earth. It goes to form our planetary body. My body is made up of the same elements and minerals and everything as the earth is. So my body's a moving, walking, talking clump of earth come to life. And it's fed through the food diagram, or through the food octave. The octave of air is where we begin to develop the Kesdjan body. This is something that we share with humanity. So we're not just working on our physical body affecting the earth, we're also working on that emotional self affecting our fellow human beings. And then finally, the final octave, the octave of impressions, we're working for ourselves. So that all the work we do follows along these three lines. And it's good to recognize this before we do any inner work. Now, a number of, just quite a few months ago, I posted a version of J.G. Bennett's 60-point exercise online. And someone from Facebook, I got into communication with him. He was an Italian guitarist, and he went to a Robert Fripp workshop back in the 90s. And Robert Fripp was a student of J.G. Bennett and King Crimson, and I believe it's King Crimson. But at any rate, he went to this workshop, and he said that he had a completely different 60-point exercise. Not completely different, but substantially different. And he was Italian, so we had a bit of translation problems, but I got him to slowly tell me and put it back, and I put it into good English, the exercise that he had been doing since I believe it was 1992, so 25 years or whatever. So we're going to do this one now. And, you know, just become aware of your body. Just become aware of your body breathing. Become aware of the sensation of air flowing into your lungs and back out again. Become aware of the movement of your diaphragm, abdomen, the muscles between your ribs. And when I was in a Bennett group, they always said, become aware of the air passing the bridge of your nose. And when I realized the bridge of the nose is close to the nasal passages, and some of the air that we're breathing when it passes the bridge of the nose can go directly to the brain and affect us in a different way. So try to become aware of the air flowing in through your nose and passing the bridge of your nose. Become aware really as you breathe in of that point, right at the bridge of your nose in your nasal passages, where the air that you're breathing in is close to the membranes of your brain. This is why people can do drugs and they snort it and it has an effect on them, because of the membranes up in this part of the face. So there is some connection. between the air as it passes the bridge of our nose and feeding ourselves with air in a slightly different way. So just become aware of your body. Become aware of the sensation of self. For those of you who are able to, try to develop the sensation of self, the awareness of your whole body as one organic whole, as one unit. And as with J.G. Bennett's exercises, the goal is you breathe in awareness and then you breathe out tension. So in part, it's a self-sensing exercise, and in part, it's also a relaxation exercise. And this follows along with what Mr. Gurdjieff said, that in order to really do inner work, it's necessary to start in a state of relaxation. So aware of your body, aware of the effect of gravity on your body, aware of the temperature both inside your body and in the air around you, aware of the movement of your lungs as they expand and contract, perhaps even aware of the atmospheric pressure around you, aware of various internal sensations, perhaps your stomach, perhaps your bladder, aware of various external sensations, the touch of clothing on your body, the air that touches your skin. Try to be here and now, present in this moment. And I'm going to read this. I have a piece of paper in front of me, just so that I don't get it wrong. I've got the other one memorized. I've been doing it so often, but I'm going to read this one. So become aware, breathing awareness into and breathing tension out of your mind's eye. Breathing awareness into and breathing tension out your right eye. Breathing awareness into and tension out your right ear. The right side of your neck. Your right shoulder joint. Your right upper arm. Your right elbow. Your right lower arm. Your right wrist. The top of your right hand. Your right thumb. Your right index finger. Your right third or middle finger. Your right fourth finger. Your right baby finger. The palm of your right hand. The outside of your upper right leg. Your right hip. Your whole upper right leg. Your right knee. Your right lower leg. Your right ankle. Your right heel. The top of your right foot. Your right big toe. Your right second toe. your right middle toe, your right fourth toe, your right baby toe, the bottom of your right foot. And now reversing this process, breathing in awareness and breathing out tension from the bottom of your left foot, your left baby toe, your left fourth toe, your left middle toe, your left second toe, your left big toe, the top of your left foot, your left ankle, or your left heel, your left ankle, your lower left leg, your left knee, the whole of your left upper leg, your left hip, the outside of your left upper leg, the palm of your left hand, your left baby finger, your left fourth finger, your left middle or third finger, your left index finger, your left thumb, the top of your left hand, your left wrist, your left lower arm, your left elbow, your left upper arm, your left shoulder joint, the left side of your neck, your left ear, your left eye, and finishing in your mind's eye. And I always like to add a little bit. I like you to just try and bring your awareness from the left side of your head down, or the right side of your head down, the right side of your body. And then bring your awareness back up the left side of your body. And then do this in conjunction with your breathing. Breathe out awareness down the right side of your body and breathe in awareness up the left side. Circling around, breathing out awareness down the right side, breathing in awareness up the left side, circling around your body for a few times. And then allow your attention to rest. And as the earth is surrounded by an atmosphere, so too are we surrounded by an atmosphere. Collect your atmosphere, draw it close to you, keep it around you about a meter, meter and a half. Even become aware of the border of your atmosphere, collect it. This is very important. Mr. Gurdjieff said it was one of the most important preliminary exercises, the collected state. So collect your atmosphere, keep it calm, keep it tranquil, keep it still. And we do this through keeping our thoughts and mind calm, keeping our body calm and feeling tranquil, or the sensation of tranquility, and keeping our feelings tranquil. Keep your atmosphere tranquil. Keep it close to you, and in a moment I'm going to count from 1 up to 3, and as I do, breathe it in, and then when you breathe out, imagine that something remains. 1, 2, 3. Breathe your atmosphere in, and as you breathe out, imagine that something remains that settles within you and helps you to grow your inner being. And then silently in your mind, repeat after me. May results from this exercise be transubstantiated within me for my being. And then just return. Any comments, any questions? Just a slight different variant of the J.G. Bennett exercise, more focused on limbs and the side of the body. We didn't do the chest down and the back down, but just a different way of doing these inner exercises. Any comments? Actually, I've muted most of you. I heard some roosters in the background, and I didn't know quite where it was all coming from. So any comments, any questions, any observations about that inner exercise? No? Okay. Conscience. I met someone who had been involved in the Gurdjieff teachings nearly 30 years. And I talked to him about conscience, and he's like, it's almost like he scratched his head and went, conscience in the teachings? And I found this bizarre. I don't know if he was playing with me or what, but conscience and remorse of conscience actually occupies a central place in these teachings. The proper wielding of remorse of conscience can allow us to repair our past. And so I'm going to pull something up. Let me just make sure it's I've got it done properly. Yeah. I'm going to pull up some quotes that I took years ago from various places throughout these teachings. And this first one, justice and remorse of conscience. This is Mr. Gurdjieff speaking to one of his students during the Nazi occupation of Paris. So there were Nazis and a lot of injustice going on in that environment at the time. And this actually leads back slightly to something that Hisham mentioned earlier in terms of understanding family and the family dynamics. But this is focusing on justice. You know, justice, and this is Mr. Gurdjieff replying, you know, justice is a big word. It is a big thing in the world. Objective things are not small things like microbes. They go according to law as the law has accustomed them to go. Remember, as you sow, so you shall reap. Not only people reap, but also families and nations. It often happens that that which happens on earth comes from something which was done by a father or a grandfather. The results converge on you, the son or the grandson. It is you who have to regulate them. This is not an injustice. It is a very great honor for you. It will be a means which will allow you to regulate the past of your father, grandfather, great-grandfather. If misfortunes come to you in your youth, it means that someone brought them. For this you must reap. He is dead. It is another on earth who reaps. You must not look at yourself egotistically. You are a link in the chain of your blood. Be proud of it. It is an honor to be this link. The more you are obliged to repair the past, the more you will have remorse of conscience. The more you are obliged to repair the past, the more you will have remorse of conscience. You will succeed in remembering all that which you have not done as you should in the past. These things which you have done contrary to justice have mortified your grandfather. Thus, you can have 10 times more remorse of conscience, and your worth will augment in proportion. You are not tail of a donkey. You have responsibilities, a family. All your family, past and future, depend on you. Your entire family depends on the way you repair the past. If you repair for everyone, it is good. If you do not repair for everyone, it is bad. You see your situation. Logically, you see your situation. Logically, do you see what justice is? Justice is not occupied with your little affairs, unredeemed pledges. It is occupied with big things. It is idiotic to believe God thinks of small things. It is the same with justice. Justice does not touch all of that. And at the same time, nothing is done on earth without it. Search for the reasons. You are obliged to have a position of responsibility in the line of your blood. You must work more to repair the past. It is difficult to understand all at once. Oops. So here, in the first quote about justice and about remorse of conscience, to recognize that we form this intricate connection with our ancestors, with our particular ray of creation. So, perhaps it was a young man talking about how the fortunes of his family declined. Maybe they got swindled out of money or something, and he's asking Mr. Gurdjieff about justice. And Mr. Gurdjieff says that, we as embodied beings, we as being here, have the opportunity to repair not just our own past, but the past of our ancestors, particularly if they left us in a difficult situation. And we do this by, developing a sense of objective awareness, by detaching from the events of our life, not being identified with the events of our life. And there are other ways of dealing with remorse of conscience and dealing with things that will be more appropriate for the next quote I'm going to bring forth. But are there any questions on this one? Justice is a big thing. God doesn't care if you promised to tie your shoelaces and you didn't. Justice affects nations. It affects humanity. It affects families. Justice in the world is a large, large thing. It's not they hurt me, I want to hurt them back, or they yelled at me and they deserve to be yelled back. It's nothing to do with that pettiness. But, we can bring more justice. We can affect those who came before us. Any comments, any questions on this? It's a pretty big quote to digest. Let me move to the next one. The next one is a bit more down to our level, so to speak. If anything of this is down to our level. This is one of my all-time favorite quotes of Mr. Gurdjieff. I don't know how many times I've shared this one with people. I don't know how many times I've tried to repeat it, even though I don't have it memorized, but with people. You interest me. So this is again during the Nazi occupation of Paris during the Second World War, and someone asked Mr. Gurdjieff a question. And this is Mr. Gurdjieff's response. You interest me. I wish to help you. Are your parents still alive? And just as an injection, the person obviously shook his head no. His parents were both dead. And then Mr. Gurdjieff continues, we have not known them, but perhaps they had souls. Perhaps they suffered. They cannot do any more where they are. They have no bodies. You must do something for them. You must think for them. You must picture them to yourself. See them again. Have their faces before your eyes. You must think of all that you owe them. You are a small piece of them, of their life. You must love them. Express your gratitude to them. Think back on all they have done for you. You must see your mistakes towards them. Persist in this. Reconstruct the scenes. When you made them suffer, perhaps cry. Relive the times when you were bad as a child. You must have remorse of conscience. Remorse. One must suffer voluntarily to repair the past. One must pay for the past. The past must be repaired. Search in your past. Create remorse. And here he gives us great insight into practical techniques, inner exercises that we can develop for ourselves. Being a hypnotherapist, I'm always doing inner exercises with my clients. So to come across something like this is gold. I remember one time when I was 19 years old, and I was feeling kind of depressed, despairing, and you know how your parents, when they see you in that mood, they try to help. My dad tried to help, and I just snapped back at him, and I criticized him, and in doing that, I actually saw, almost, metaphorically, like I cut to his bone. I really hurt him in that moment, but I was a teenager. I was really just concerned with myself. I didn't realize this until I had gotten involved in the Gurdjieff work, until I had really begun to struggle with remorse of conscience. And I recall some of the things that I said to him. And so in the meditative state, a nice quiet state, what I've actually done is I've recalled his face. I've recalled that look of anguish. I've recalled how my words hurt him, how that was shown on his face. But more than that, I have really striven to imagine that I am him. Mr. Gurdjieff said, only those may enter the planet purgatory who have walked in another's shoes. In other words, the ability to put ourselves in someone else's position is an extremely high ability, and it's very important for this inner work. So not only did I reimagine myself saying those words, seeing the shock, representing him before me, the pain, the hurt, but I've reimagined that scenario from being inside him. I have done my best, striven to experience the anguish, to experience the pain, to experience the words that the hurt that my words caused him. In other words, I have shared in that experience. And by sharing in that experience, according to what Mr. Gurdjieff was saying here, we help to release them. Now, there's something else interesting that he says here, do they have a body? No, they were dead. And he said, okay, now you can do the work for them. So he's making a distinction between, our ancestors who are alive, perhaps our parents or grandparents who are alive, as opposed to those parents and grandparents and people who preceded us on our own personal ray of creation who are dead. We can really help those who are dead according to this statement. So by entering into the hurt that we caused them, by experiencing that remorse within ourselves for the pain and suffering that we have created for them, allows us to not only help them, but to also help ourselves, and in effect, to repair our past. And this is a huge part of the Gurdjieff teachings, but it's a part, that a lot of people don't talk about, because remorse of conscience, they don't fully understand it. Now, with people who are still alive, we can also experience remorse of conscience. He said that we have to enter into the consequences of our actions. So we have to enter into the hurt that we caused other people. Now, if they are our ancestors and they are before us on the ray of creation, we can actually mitigate, using a Hindu word, some of their karma. We can take away some of the stuff that they will have to work on. We can work on it for them. And by working on it for our dead ancestors, we help them. Whereas someone who's alive, we can do the same process, but we don't really so much help that other person as we begin to repair our own past by stepping into the pain that we caused people. There's an organization called the International Association of Near-Death Experiences, or for people who've had near-death experiences. This is a phenomenon particularly acute in the modern age, even though there are references to it going well back into recorded history. But with modern technology's ability to resuscitate people, some of them are able to recall what happened. And one common theme is, they say when you're dying, your life flashes before your eyes. But what some of these people said is worse. When you're dying, you experience all of the hurt that you caused other people. So you, in that process, you go and you experience every bit of hurt and trauma that you caused other people. And so through practicing remorse of conscience, we are actually taking this process that may happen after we die and we're bringing it into our life. And in a sense, we are dying before we die. We are engaging in that process ahead of time so that we don't have to do it later on. And this also highlights something about Mr. Gurdjieff. There are all sorts of subconscious routines, and to make the conscious and the subconscious, to unite them, is a big theme of his as well. Every act of mindful awareness is uniting the conscious and the subconscious. A moment ago, our subconscious minds were fully aware of the bottom of our feet. Now that we are conscious of the bottom of our feet, our conscious and our subconscious are in a tiny bit more of an alignment. And by doing conscious work of things that happen at the unconscious level, of things that may happen even after we die, we are doing it now. We are bringing, harmonizing ourselves, and we are doing this before we will be forced to do it. So whenever you've hurt someone, whenever you've caused pain to someone, if it's really major, if it's something that really nags your conscience, try to recreate that scene as fully as you can. Try to see what you saw, hear what you heard. Try to be in that place with the person that you hurt. And try to be aware of your actions. Try to be aware of the blindness and where you're coming from and that mechanicality. And then try to become aware of the pain, of the suffering that you caused that other person. Try to see it in their face, in their eyes, in the way they hold their mouth, their shoulders. And then try to enter into their experience. Try to imagine that you are them, that you are looking out through their eyes, and that you hear your words, you see your actions, and try to feel the pain that you caused them. And by doing this with the major events and then various minor events, we can slowly begin to repair our past. You know, it may be a good idea to sit down with a pad and paper and think of the worst things that you have ever done to another human being. It won't be a complete list. Other things will seep up in from your subconscious mind throughout your day or week. But some of the worst things where you have caused deep pain, deep hurt to other people, and you can go all the way back to your childhood, and you represent the scene to yourself. You try to imagine it, reimagine it as closely as you can. I'm not that visual a person myself, so I don't do it so much visually. I try to see the person's face, but the room or in the environment, that usually is beyond me. But, you know, that's just my one sense. That's my eyes, you know, hearing, smell, the sense of taste, feeling. Try to put yourself with your full sensory imagination into the scene, and to reimagine yourself hurting that other person, and then try to reimagine yourself in that other person, experiencing the hurt you caused them. And through doing this, I mean, I can get even more complex about remorse and conscience, but this is a really basic, simple way to begin to bring this practice into our life in order to repair our past. Think about things that you've done. Think about where you've hurt other people, where you've caused them misery, where you've caused them pain, where you've caused them suffering. This is something that really should be done person to person in terms of, you know, it's not if you stole a candy bar from a corner shop. Perhaps you could imagine the owner of the shop struggling and trying to send money to their family, say back in Korea or wherever they're from, and that you've been stealing money from them. But you can go that way, but this is more for person to person, the pain that your actions and your words have caused other people. You could even, if you were, say, a manager of a company and you were asked to fire a whole bunch of employees and you did it through email, you could actually try to enter into that situation and see the pain that each employee felt when they got the email terminating them. We can expand this, and we can bring it into our life and slowly, step by step by step, begin the process of repairing our past. Now, I will get a little bit more complex on this. Mr. Gurdjieff said that in Tales, we have the data for organic shame, and we also have the data for remorse. And organic shame is the shame we felt as little children. And Mr. Gurdjieff describes his own experience of that in the book 3 times. Once is significant, 3 times is really important. So he talks about the flushed cheeks and the tears. If you can recall as a child, made to feel so bad about something you did, you were so ashamed, your face was just, beet red. The word he used was organic shame. And whenever he uses organic, he's referring to the physical body. So that childhood experience of shame, how it manifested in our physical body. And then we have the head-brain remorse. This is more of an adult quality. Oh God, I shouldn't have said that to that person. Now I've hurt them. And, we have these thoughts of remorse all the time where we feel really bad about something. So if we can recall the physical sensation and the physical data for organic shame, as well as recalling a moment when we experienced tremendous head-brain remorse. Again, going back to when I was 19, a teenager. I had just moved into a condominium building with my dad and brother. I think I'd been there for a few months. And I was with a high school friend, and we were really, whoops, it's saying there's going to be a connection problem. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's going to come right back. Hope you didn't experience a connection problem. I was living on the 22nd floor of a 23-floor building, and I got on the floor, and when I went to the ground floor, I pressed every single button in the elevator. Ha 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 ha. Teenagers do that all the time. I got off the elevator, and there was a woman who was gray with worry, and there were 2 ambulance technicians with her with a gurney. Now, I didn't realize back then that all ambulance technicians carry a key where they can just completely put the elevator in service or take it off or whatever. But I walked out of that elevator, I saw them, and I thought they were going to have to stop at every floor. And I felt so bad about that. That was a head-brain realization. And that stunned, shocked awareness that I had, I used the remembrance of that experience, combining with the childhood experience of organic shame, to create a feeling of remorse of conscience. It's the 2 of them coming together. That head-brain awareness that I've hurt someone, I've done something wrong, and the body-brain, the organic shame, the tears, the redness in the face, everything we experienced as a child, and bringing those together allows us to experience what Mr. Gurdjieff called remorse of conscience. And then those 2 experiences combined, that has the power to repair the past, to take that feeling back into the past, to review our actions from that vantage point to, perhaps we could think of that chocolate bar we stole from the corner shop when we were in grade 2 and bring that sense of organic shame and the head brain remorse together and to feel really bad about our behavior and to go back and use this to begin to repair our past. Are there any comments on this? Any questions? This is one of the overlooked things in the Gurdjieff teachings. Brian.
You had said something about remorse as a necessity for entering the plan of purgatory.
Well, I mean, not remorse. There's a quote in Beelzebub Tales where, and I'm not going to get the quote right, he who cannot enter into the position of another person will not be a candidate for the holy planet purgatory. The holy planet purgatory is supposed to be a very advanced place where we can go. I don't want to get into the whole retails, and you'll understand a bit better what he means by that. But he's basically saying that we have to be able to enter into another person's experience. In other words, empathy. Sociopaths, psychopaths do not feel empathy. They do not feel pain that they see in someone else. Someone else hurts themselves, they feel no pain. A normal person, we have mirror neurons, we have empathy, and someone hurts themselves, and we enter into the pain, and we feel with them. Not so much for them, but with them. And it's this ability to enter into another person's awareness that's really important. Within the Native Americans, they talk about, never judge someone else until you walk a mile in their moccasins. And I think he may have gotten it from there, or maybe they have something in, they probably have something common, similar in Central Asia, where he was talking about, being in their shoes. In other words, living their experience. I met a young man. He was 21 years old. He was actually, he was very present, very mindful. He didn't follow any kind of teaching. I was rather impressed with him, but he had this limitation. But how he had developed himself was that whenever he was in a coffee shop or a restaurant, he would look at people and he would look into their eyes. And somehow through that process, he was able to enter in to their emotional state. I had a different thing that I did, I've been doing for years, where to try and understand what someone is feeling, I will adopt their facial posture. And, I will do this on the subway and on buses and trying to enter into their state. I will also follow someone, say, on the subway platform as we go up the stairs, and I will try to walk like them. I will try to move like them. I will try to hold my body like them in order to try and enter into their state and become aware, not what they're thinking, but what they're feeling, because our feeling circuit is in our body. So, we hold feelings, in our fists and our body. And if you can follow along with what someone is doing and mimic them without them noticing, by the way, they notice and they get upset. But without them noticing, you can begin to start entering into other people's experiences. This young man did it by looking at their eyes, and from their eyes, he was able to enter into their perception and what was going on within them in the moment. Emotionally, not intellectually. He couldn't follow their thoughts, but he could really get a sense of their being. And it was a technique he taught himself, and I tried to explain what he was doing to him and tried to get him to expand. But, he taught himself this, and he thought it was the most important realization. And he wanted to stick with that, as 21-year-olds are apt to do. But it was a really interesting thing that he came up with. but more than that, to enter into someone that we've hurt, or even to enter into someone that we think of as an enemy, to try to imagine their reality, why they react their way, to try to step in their shoes and imagine that you are them. In hypnosis, I was taught a technique called forgiveness of others, FOO, forgiveness of others. And in the first part, you imagine the person who hurt you sitting in a chair opposite you, and you imagine yourself there, and you hurt me when, and you made me feel when, and I scribble notes furiously, trying to get the you made me feel, and you hurt me when, and to try to get a number of examples of that. And then I say, through the magic of the mind and the power of hypnosis, 1, 2, 3, be them. And then I start talking to them, and I say, you heard what he said, you made him feel this, and you made him do, I make them enter into the other person's reality and justify their behavior. And in a sense, I force them into that other person's reality through hypnosis. And they begin to see the other person's behavior and the other person's justification and the other person's rationale. And so it allows them just a little tiny bit to enter into a state of remorse of conscience. And then I've also worked with people who have been involved in the Gurdjieff teachings tangentially to engender the feeling of remorse of conscience, taking them back, put them in the hypnotic state. And I want you to go back to a time in your childhood you were really ashamed, and recall how it felt in your body, that redness in your face, the tears, and then recall a moment in your adult life where you really did something and you just filled with all these bad thoughts of remorse. And then I bring them together. And then we go back and explore some of the points in their past where they really hurt other people and they've done bad behavior. It's a very interesting process and experience for them. So through remorse of conscience, we can begin to repair our past. Any other comment?
Allan?
Yes.
Yes. Well, for me personally, like you said, I have also in the past a lot of problem with people, of understanding people. And one time I understood that no one is responsible for what he do, because no one has chosen his parents, the era in which he lives. No one chooses really what he is, on how, or his ideas, or what he is internally. And when I have understood this, it was for me so much easier to put myself in the shoes of others, because we are all conditioned.
Yeah.
None of us have chosen to be alive. None of us have chosen to be humans. If we had a choice, maybe we would have chosen to be angels or anything else. Maybe we would have chosen not to be at all. That would be easier. So we are conditioned. We didn't get to choose our traditions, the country in which we were born, and that has a huge influence on us. That shapes us, the way we think, the way we act, the way we see things. And I also questions the way it is, because mostly when I am angry at someone or at what someone has done to me, it is because I have an image of how he must behave, and that image which I have, who said that it is correct or not? So I also at some point I was very angry at my parents, the way I was born, the way I was raised. But I also now I after a lot of thinking, I know that they have done the best they thought they could do. And if they say or do something that makes me angry or that I don't like, it's not that they do it intentionally. We are mechanisms, so and that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that helps to control your own feeling state, so that you're not rocked this way and that way by how people react to you. And so that's, not being identified with the moment, not being, so caught up. And we should also here distinguish between personality and essence. I've talked about this, way back in previous meetings, but personality is what is not our own. It is what comes to us from our family, from our environment, from all sorts of things. It's what's false within ourselves. And most people operate from personality. They operate from that mask that they wear, and that mask is purely mechanical. It is not conscious. There's no real awareness in personality. And so what someone does from a state of personality, we cannot really take, be offended by it. We should just learn to not identify, to, inwardly separate from the situation, to play a role, but not be identified with what is going on. So yeah, that's a very important adjunct to this, to try to be more neutral, or to perceive people more neutrally, and to recognize that they are automatons, they're machines, that if you push them one way, they're going to react. It's just inevitable. And to have tremendous sympathy for them. Towards his students and the people around him, Mr. Gurdjieff was a force of nature and not necessarily a good force. He could be almost as destructive as a hurricane in exposing people's blind spots, weaknesses, pushing their buttons. But in the world, Mr. Gurdjieff was considered a saint. In Paris during the Nazi occupation, apparently he had a food kitchen going on and he kept neighborhoods alive. But if you became a student, heaven help you. But everyone else he treated, or tried to treat, or mostly treated with utmost consideration, with the proviso, if his students were there, maybe he was trying to create a point and make a point, he might have behaved differently. But people in the streets of Paris, little children called him Mr. Bonbon. He said you can't hold those things against those people. So yeah, it's a very good valid point there. Any other comments, any other questions? I mean, I have some more quotes. Maybe I'll get to them next week in terms of remorse of conscience, because we've got about another 8 minutes.
I got just a quick comment. What you were talking about for organic shame, that the feeling as a child of being in trouble, or of the tears and the red face and everything. I think I had a lot of that as a kid, and I think I kind of numbed it out. It was very uncomfortable to be feeling that as often as I don't know, as often as I did, I guess. And I really like this take on it, that it's of use, and you can, to combine the two. I mean, it's an important ingredient in a genuine response to life, and I've always felt that part of myself was out of place. So I don't know, I'm gonna sit with that this week, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, my mother was very much into shaming as well. I don't know if it came from your parents or wherever it came from. And so, I have very, very acute memories of experience organic shame. And as an adult, looking back, those, some of the things that I did were shameful, but some of the things I didn't weren't shameful. They were just my mother's sense of morality. But the thing about organic shame, the most important thing that I've determined or learned about it, it's our own internal representation, to be able to re-feel that feeling again if we recall what it felt like. Now, it doesn't have to be the result of a proper shaming, doing something bad. So much of the organic shame we experienced as children, it's just warped. And it really doesn't have, belong, so to speak, in reality. It was something that Mr. Gurdjieff went on a lot about, how adults really force children to be insincere through their own projections on children in an attempt to control children. And parents quite often don't realize what they're subjecting their children to. So the feeling of organic shame, whatever caused it, the cause doesn't have to be an accurate cause. It doesn't have to be an objective cause. The more important thing is to recall how we physically experience that sense. And it is a sensation of organic shame. It's the organic self. It's the physical body, how we experience that in our body. But just that is just half of the solution. The other half is the remorse that comes from our head, that like God, as children, we don't have that awareness with our head brain. That comes later. And later on, the manager who fires everyone through email, for instance, may experience tremendous remorse of conscience. He may feel bad. He may stop at the bar on the way home and, drink and, try to self-calm, so to speak, to get over that experience. But unless it's combined with the organic shame, it doesn't quite have the same power. So as adults, we lose the organic shame and we move more into the realm of remorse, where we realize our actions hurt someone else. And we feel the pain up here and a little bit here, but it's not the same as being a 6-year-old with tears and red face and crying and whatever. And so by bringing those two together, we create a potent force that we can then use to go and repair our past. I'm going to talk more about this in the next show. This whole use of organic shame, repairing our past. I have to say that, I think it was 5 years ago for Lent, I created a recording, and excuse my language. The recording said, I am a shithead, head. I am an asshole, body. I am a scumbag. And I created a recording that repeated those. And for the head, all of the words, all of the thoughts, all of the things that I had done to hurt people. For the body, all of my physical actions, everything, physically that I did to hurt people. And then for my emotions, everything that I emotionally did to hurt people. And I listened to this recording over and over, bringing up memory after memory after memory of all sorts of things that I did in my past, and then bringing the remorse and the organic shame together as remorse of conscience to deal with it. So, for me, the shithead was the head brain stuff. The asshole was the body brain stuff, and the scumbag was the feeling brain stuff. And I tried to listen to this recording for about half an hour every single day for Lent. And Lent is 46 days long. And bringing up and dredging up all of those memories. And so, they talk about, confession. It's one of the sacred sacraments of the Catholic Church. And they say if you become a new Catholic, they expect you to do a major confession. In other words, it's almost like a life review where you go back and think about your life and the things that you did wrong that you need confessing. And, I'm quite taken by that idea of, creating a journal or creating some kind of document, or even within our mind, going back and really not just the stuff we may have stole, like that chocolate bar, but the people that we actually hurt. And, you know, it's human to human contact. It's people to people. Those people have had the near-death experiences where they've described experiencing that remorse of conscience, going through the pain they caused other people. It was person to person. It wasn't them banging into that wall and knocking that fence down or whatever. It was limited to human relationships. We could also expand this to include animals, you know, maybe mistreatment of animals. You know, when I was 6 years old, I hate to say this, I swung a cat around by its tail. And I felt so bad about doing that, and it hissed, and the cat never liked me again and would run. You know, just to recall different moments in our life. When I was, you know, in grade 2, and the shopping plaza, there was a store there. I got caught shoplifting. I was told by someone else it was the easy way to get candy bar, and I got caught. And remembering all of these, bringing it up, and the more you go down to the mud, that's sort of at the bottom, and you stir it up, the more things get dark, but eventually you begin filtering it out, and the more things just start seeping up, the bad you've done. Now you can't take this the wrong way. I'm a sinner, and this is all for cleansing. It's not for condemning yourself. It's all designed to release and to cleanse. So, you know, you bring it up, you experience the remorse, and let it go. At any rate, it's now noon. I would like to thank you all for being here. We're going to continue with this remorse of conscience next week. I've posted a full set of quotes. I haven't got through them all. Think about this. Bring questions next week. Think about what I've just said in terms of engendering remorse of conscience. But I would like to thank you all for being here. And, you know, hopefully you have a good week. And try and work with remorse of conscience. Take care. Bye now.
Thanks, Allan.